Let me ask you something strange. Where are you right now? And I don't mean what room, I don't mean what city or what country or what time zone. I mean, where are you? Like the actual you. The thing that is watching this video right now and having thoughts about it and deciding what it thinks and whether it agrees and whether it's going to keep watching or open a different video. Where is that thing? Is it in your head? Is it behind your eyes somewhere, like a little person sitting in a control room watching screens? Is it your whole body? Is it something more vague than that? Like a general sense of presence that doesn't really have a specific location, it's just kind of here. Take a second. I'm serious. Actually try to find it. Don't just think about the question. Try to actually locate the thing doing the thinking. Weird, right? Because the more you look for the thing doing the looking, the more it kind of slips. It's like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. Every time you turn your attention toward the self seems to step out of the frame. There's thoughts about it, there's sensations, there's the feeling of being here, but the actual thing, the stable, solid, continuous you that you have been completely certain about for your entire life, kind of hard to pin down. And that's not because you're bad at this. It's not a concentration problem. It's not that you need to meditate more or think harder or read more philosophy. It's hard to pin down because of something very specific about how the self works, something that a German philosopher and neuroscientist named Thomas Metzinger spent his entire career trying to explain. And what he found is genuinely one of the strangest ideas I have ever encountered. And I want to share it with you today because once you understand it, you will never quite look at yourself the same way again. Which sounds like an exaggeration. It is not an exaggeration. Here's what this video is about. The self, the I, the you, the thing you just tried to find and couldn't quite locate, is not what you think it is. It is not a fixed thing sitting somewhere in your brain running the show. It is not the author of your thoughts. It is not the pilot. It is a story. A very convincing, very detailed, extremely well-produced story that your brain tells about itself continuously, automatically, without ever stopping. And the reason this matters, the reason this is not just a fun philosophical curiosity, is that the story does not know it is a story. It thinks it is real. It thinks it is you. And it has been making decisions in your name for your entire life without you knowing. Let's get into it. I want to start somewhere that might seem completely unrelated, but I promise is going somewhere important. I want to start with driving. Specifically, have you ever driven somewhere and arrived with absolutely no memory of the journey? Like you got in the car, you knew where you were going, and the next thing you know, you're parked outside and your brain is doing this thing of going, oh, we're here. When did that happen? The car navigated the turns, the hands worked the wheel, the foot found the brake at exactly the right moments, the eyes watched the road and processed everything they needed to process. Every single thing that needed to happen to get the car from point A to point B happened, correctly, safely, without incident. You just weren't there for it. Not really. Something was there. Something was running the whole operation. But the thing you call you, the aware, conscious, present you, was somewhere else entirely, replaying a conversation from 3 days ago, planning something, thinking about something someone said, doing the thing that human brains do, which is basically never at any point actually be in the present moment unless something unusual forces them to be. Most people have this experience regularly. Highway hypnosis is what they call it. You also get it walking a familiar route. Your body just goes and you surface 10 minutes later at your destination with no real memory of how you got there. You get it doing tasks you've done so many times they're completely automatic. Making coffee, brushing your teeth, the first 30 minutes of your morning if you're anything like me, just running on a kind of autopilot. body doing its thing, mind somewhere unrelated, until something breaks the spell and you snap back. And we all laugh about it. Oh, I was on autopilot. Oh, I totally zoned out. Funny little glitch, moving on. But here's the question I cannot stop thinking about. What if those moments are not the glitch? What if we have this completely backwards? What if the automatic thing, the thing running the body while you are nowhere to be found, what if that is actually the default, the normal state, the thing that is happening most of the time, even when you think you're present? And what if the self, the feeling of being you, the sense of being the one in charge, the experience of having thoughts and making choices and being a continuous person moving through time, what if that is the thing that gets constructed on top of the automatic, generated, produced, added after the fact, and then presented to itself as the thing that was there all along? What if you are not the driver? What if you are the story the car tells about having a driver? Okay, Thomas Metzinger, let's actually talk about him properly because I've been building to this and I want to do it right. He is a professor of theoretical philosophy at the University of Mainz in Germany. He has been studying consciousness for decades, not in a loose, hand-wavy, what-does-it-all-mean kind of way, in a very specific, very technical, what is actually mechanistically happening in a brain when a creature has the experience of being itself kind of way. He collaborates with neuroscientists, he runs experiments, he takes this stuff seriously in the most literal sense of the word. He wrote a book called Being No One. It is about 800 pages long. I want to be honest with you about my experience of reading this book, which is that I did not read all 800 pages. I read significant chunks of it, I read summaries of the rest, I watched interviews with him, I watched lectures, I read his more accessible follow-up book, The Ego Tunnel, which I would actually recommend if this topic interests you. It's written for people who haven't spent their careers in academic philosophy, which describes most of us. But Being No One, 800 pages, extremely dense, extremely precise. At one point, I read the same paragraph 4 times and felt less certain about what it said each time. That is either a sign of a very difficult book or a sign that I need more sleep. Possibly both. But the central idea, the thing the whole book is building toward, is actually expressible in plain language, and it is this. There is no self. Not in the way you think there is. What there is, what Metzinger says is genuinely happening when you experience being you, is something he calls the phenomenal self-model. Big phrase, simple idea. Your brain is running a simulation of itself continuously in real time. It is generating a model of the body, the history, the personality, the current intentions, the sense of being a person who has a past and is moving toward a future, and it is presenting that model to itself as the experiencer, as the thing having all the experiences, as the subject, as the I. And the model is extraordinarily good at its job. It is seamless, it is detailed, it updates constantly. It integrates information from thousands of different processes happening simultaneously in the brain and stitches them together into the coherent, unified, continuous experience of being one person, which is, when you think about what that actually requires, how much computational work that is, how many things have to be coordinated, is kind of remarkable. The fact that you experience being one person rather than a cacophony of competing processes is genuinely impressive work by your brain. The problem, the specific problem, that Metzinger dedicated his career to understanding is that the model doesn't know it's a model. It experiences itself as real, as fundamental, as the thing itself rather than a representation of the thing. You don't experience having a self-model, you experience being a self. You don't experience the brain generating your sense of identity, you experience having an identity. The machinery is invisible. The simulation is, in Metzinger's word, transparent. Not transparent in the see-through sense, transparent in the sense that you can't see it. You look through it, directly to the experience of being you, without ever seeing the layer that's generating that experience. And it's transparent precisely because it's working. That's the key insight. The model is invisible as a model, exactly when it's functioning correctly. When it works, you don't notice it. You just are. Simple. Obvious, completely unremarkable. When it breaks down, though, when the machinery becomes visible, that is when things get very strange indeed. There is a condition called depersonalisation disorder, and I want to spend some time on this because I think it is one of the most genuinely revealing things that can happen to a human brain, and most people have never heard of it. Partly because it's underdiagnosed, partly because it's difficult to describe, and partly because the people who have it often don't talk about it, because describing it to someone who has never experienced it tends to produce looks of polite confusion followed by a change of subject. People with depersonalization describe watching themselves from outside. The self becomes a character they are observing rather than inhabiting. Their body is doing things, their thoughts are happening, the world is there, but the sense of being the one doing and thinking and experiencing, the ownership, is gone or seriously loosened. They are watching a film of their own life from a seat a few feet behind their own body. Everything is still occurring, it just doesn't feel like it's occurring to them. Imagine that for a moment, not as a metaphor. Actually imagine it. You're having a conversation with someone. You can hear yourself talking. You can see your hands moving. But the feeling that you are the one talking, that these are your hands, that this conversation belongs to you, absent. You're watching a stranger who looks exactly like you going through the motions of your life. That is depersonalization. And what is happening neurologically when this occurs is measurable. There are specific changes in brain activity associated with it. Reduced activity in the insula, which is involved in the brain's awareness of its own body. Changes in prefrontal activity, altered emotional processing. The self-model, Metzinger's self-model, is not running the way it normally runs. The thing that produces the sense of being you is turned down, or disrupted, or in some way not operating correctly. And what you're left with is experience without ownership. The movie without the audience member who was supposed to be watching it. Consciousness without the self that consciousness is supposed to belong to. Metzinger has been through something like this himself in his 20s. He had what he describes as a hypnagogic experience, the state between sleeping and waking, that strange threshold where the brain is transitioning and the normal rules don't quite apply, in which the self-model dissolved. Not his body, his perceptions were intact. He could see the room, he could feel the bed, but the I, the sense of being someone, just went. And he has described it as one of the most terrifying experiences of his life. Not enlightening, not peaceful, not the kind of ego dissolution you read about in meditation literature where everything becomes love and light. Terrifying. Because the self-model, it turns out, is not just a philosophical curiosity. It is the thing that makes everything else make sense. It organizes the raw data of experience into the coherent story of a person living a life. Without it, there is experience, but it belongs to nobody. It is happening to nothing. And that is, by all accounts, extremely not fun. He spent the rest of his career trying to understand what happened to him that night, which is honestly the most relatable academic origin story I've ever come across. Man has terrifying experience. Man spends 30 years figuring out what it was. I respect that. That is the correct response to a terrifying experience. Get to the bottom of it. Okay, I want to bring in some other people here because I want this to feel like more than one person's theory. I want multiple angles pointing at the same thing from different directions. Anil Seth, neuroscientist, University of Sussex. He gave a TED Talk a few years ago that has been watched 13 million times. 13 million people chose to watch a video about the neuroscience of consciousness, which tells you something. That is not an accident. That is a lot of people walking around quietly wondering about this stuff and waiting for someone to explain it in a way they could understand.
The central idea of his talk is this: the brain doesn't perceive reality. It generates it. Right now, this moment, your brain is not sitting there passively receiving information from the world around you like a camera taking in light. It is running a prediction, a continuous, real-time prediction of what is probably out there based on everything it has ever learned about what is usually out there, and then checking that prediction against the actual sensory data coming in and adjusting where necessary. But the adjusting is the small part. The generating is the enormous part. Most of what you experience as the world around you right now is being produced from inside your skull. It is not a faithful recording of external reality. It is your brain's best guess at what external reality probably looks like, continuously updated by incoming data. Seth calls this a controlled hallucination, and I love that phrase specifically because of what it does to the word hallucination. Normally, hallucination means something going wrong, a malfunction, a breakdown, drugs, psychosis, the brain misbehaving. But Seth is saying, no, hallucination is just what perception is. It's what it has always been. Every perception you have ever had in your entire life has been generated, has been your brain's prediction of what is out there, rather than a direct recording of what is out there. The difference between your experience right now and a hallucination in the clinical sense is just the degree of control, how tightly the prediction is being calibrated against the incoming data. In normal perception, very tightly calibrated. In certain drug states or certain psychiatric conditions, the calibration loosens, the prediction drifts, the hallucination becomes less controlled. But the generation itself, that never stops, has never stopped, is happening right now as you read these words. Now, here's where Seth and Metzinger connect. If the brain is generating your experience of the external world, producing your experience of the room, the light, the sounds, the feeling of the surface under your hands, what is it doing when it generates your experience of yourself, of the internal world, of the I that seems to be sitting behind all these external experiences, having them, owning them? Same thing, exact same process. The brain generates a model of itself, of the body and its states, of the history and the memories, of the personality and the patterns, of the intentions and the plans, and it presents that model as the experiencer, as the subject, as the thing having the experience, rather than just another thing being experienced. And you, the thing watching this video right now, you are that model. You are not the brain doing the generating. You are the model being generated. You are the story being told. Which sounds, I know, like something you'd find written on a wall in a philosophy student's apartment next to a poster of Nietzsche, but it is what the neuroscience is actually pointing at. And the neuroscience is serious. Let me give you one more piece of evidence, one more angle, and this one is my favorite because it is so simple and the implication of it is so enormous. Benjamin Libet, neuroscientist, 1980s, he did an experiment that has been causing philosophers and neuroscientists to quietly lose their minds ever since. Not loudly, quietly, in the way that really disturbing ideas tend to settle into the background of a field and make everything slightly uncomfortable for decades. The experiment is very simple. He asked people to flex their wrist, just whenever they felt like it, whenever the urge arose, flex. No specific timing, no instruction to do it at any particular moment, just feel the urge, flex. And he asked them to watch a clock with a fast-moving hand and to note where the hand was at the moment they first felt the urge to move. That's it. Simple. He was also, crucially, measuring the electrical activity in their brains throughout. Here's what he found. The electrical activity associated with the movement, the signal that preceded the action, the so-called readiness potential, began on average 550 milliseconds before the participants reported any conscious awareness of wanting to move. Half a second. The brain had already started preparing the movement before the person knew they wanted to make it. The decision, or at least the neural event that produced the decision, was already in progress before consciousness showed up to the party. And then consciousness arrived, half a second later, surveyed the situation, and said, yes, that was me. I decided to do that. Very deliberate, completely intentional. But the brain had already decided, before the I arrived to claim credit.
Now, I want to be careful here because this experiment has been debated and picked apart and qualified for 40 years, and it does not settle every question about free will, and I'm not going to pretend it does. Neuroscience is complicated, and consciousness is genuinely the most complicated thing in all of neuroscience, and anyone who tells you they have it fully figured out is either lying or has not thought about it carefully enough.
But the general finding that the brain generates intentions and actions and conscious awareness of those intentions arrives slightly after the fact has held up well across many different experimental approaches by many different researchers. The specific numbers get debated. The general picture keeps getting confirmed. Which means, and this is the part that is genuinely hard to look at, the self might be less like the author of your life and more like the narrator. Not the one making the story happen, the one describing it while it happens. Showing up half a second late, consistently, every time, and saying, yes, that was me, I did that, I chose that, very deliberate. The narrator who has completely convinced itself that it is the author. The news anchor confidently reporting events they did not witness. Okay, I know exactly where your mind is going, because mine went there too when I first properly sat with this. The self is a construction, the I is a story. My choices aren't really mine, nothing is real, nothing matters. We're all just biological robots running programs we didn't write and calling it free will. Existential crisis, stare at the ceiling, potentially never leave the house again. I hear you. I have been in that corner of this idea. But I think the nihilism response, the nothing matters response, is actually the least interesting and honestly the least accurate thing you can do with this information. And I want to tell you why. The model is real. Not in the sense of being some fixed, eternal, metaphysical thing that exists independently of the brain generating it, but in the sense that it is genuinely happening right now. The experience of being you, the continuity, the ownership of your thoughts, the sense of being the one watching this, that is actually occurring. Metzinger is not saying your experience is fake, he is saying your experience is generated, which sounds similar but is completely different. These are not the same statement. Think about a dream. When you're in a dream, your brain is generating the whole thing. The people, the places, the events, the emotions, the sense of being you inside the dream, all of it, completely made up, produced entirely from inside the skull with zero external input. And yet, when you're in it, it is completely real. The fear is real, the joy is real, the sadness is real. The you inside the dream is having a genuine experience of something. The fact that it's generated doesn't make it less real, it just means it's generated. Real and generated are not opposites. They can both be true at the same time. Your waking experience is the same, generated, real, simultaneously, both things at once. And here is the actually interesting part. Here is the part that changes things in a practical, everyday, actually relevant to your life kind of way. If the self is a model, if the I is a story being generated continuously, then the story is not fixed. It is not something you were handed at birth, complete, finished, immutable, yours forever, whether you like it or not. It is a process, an ongoing, dynamic, constantly updating process. And processes can change, have been changing your whole life. Every time something significant enough happened to shift the model, every relationship that changed how you understood yourself, every experience that updated something fundamental, every idea that rewired something, every time you did something you didn't think you could do, and the model had to revise itself to accommodate that fact. You are not the static thing the model represents. You are the process that generates the model. And you have more influence over that process than you probably realize. Not total control, not the kind of control where you can just decide to be a completely different person by Tuesday. The model is conservative, it resists rapid change. Stability is partly the whole point of it. But real influence, the kind that accumulates, the kind that operates inside the system and shapes it from within over time through the things you pay attention to and the things you practice and the experiences you seek out and the stories you keep telling yourself and the ones you decide to stop telling. Because here is something important about the self-model that Metzinger is very clear about. It is conservative. It wants to stay stable. Stability is a core feature, not a bug. The brain needs a reliable, continuous sense of being the same person across time in order to function, in order to make predictions, in order to plan. So the model updates slowly, reluctantly. It holds on, it resists revision. It maintains old narratives about who you are and what you're capable of, and what you deserve and what is and isn't possible for you, long after those narratives have stopped being accurate, long after you have changed, long after the evidence has been updated. The model is always running slightly behind reality, working on old data, telling a version of you that was built for a world you no longer inhabit. Which means, and I find this genuinely useful rather than depressing, most people are walking around with a self-model that is out of date, that was constructed from old experiences and old conclusions and old stories about what kind of person they are. And that outdated model is generating their intentions, steering their choices, building their life, telling them what is and isn't possible, running the car, while the conscious, aware, actually present version of themselves sits in the passenger seat half a second behind every decision, nodding along, saying, "Yes, that was deliberate, I chose that." Nietzsche saw this. He came at it from a completely different direction, not neuroscience. This was the 19th century. Neuroscience as we know it didn't exist. But he was pointing at the same thing. The herd, the inherited values, the life you build on top of what other people decided you should want, the character you perform so long you forget it's a performance. He said the most dangerous thing a person can do is live their whole life as a character someone else created and never notice. He didn't have Metzinger's framework, but he was describing the same machinery from the outside, the automatic thing running, the self that is not quite yours, the story that was not quite written by you. Metzinger just found the brain underneath what Nietzsche was describing. And David Hume, Scottish philosopher, 18th century, 250 years before any of this neuroscience existed, Hume sat down and did something that sounds almost childish until you realize nobody had actually done it carefully before. He tried to find the self, directly, through introspection. He looked as hard as he could for the stable, continuous I that was supposedly doing all of the experiencing. And he reported that every time he reached for it, he found thoughts, sensations, feelings, perceptions, but never the thing having all of those, never the experiencer itself, just more content. Which means, and I find this genuinely useful rather than depressing, most people are walking around with a self-model that is out of date, that was constructed from old experiences and old conclusions and old stories about what kind of person they are. And that outdated model is generating their intentions, steering their choices, building their life, telling them what is and isn't possible, running the car, while the conscious, aware, actually present version of themselves sits in the passenger seat half a second behind every decision, nodding along, saying, "Yes, that was deliberate, I chose that." Nietzsche saw this. He came at it from a completely different direction, not neuroscience. This was the 19th century. Neuroscience as we know it didn't exist. But he was pointing at the same thing. The herd, the inherited values, the life you build on top of what other people decided you should want, the character you perform so long you forget it's a performance. He said the most dangerous thing a person can do is live their whole life as a character someone else created and never notice. He didn't have Metzinger's framework, but he was describing the same machinery from the outside, the automatic thing running, the self that is not quite yours, the story that was not quite written by you. Metzinger just found the brain underneath what Nietzsche was describing. And David Hume, Scottish philosopher, 18th century, 250 years before any of this neuroscience existed, Hume sat down and did something that sounds almost childish until you realize nobody had actually done it carefully before. He tried to find the self, directly, through introspection. He looked as hard as he could for the stable, continuous I that was supposedly doing all of the experiencing. And he reported that every time he reached for it, he found thoughts, sensations, feelings, perceptions, but never the thing having all of those, never the experiencer itself, just more content, more experience, the river, but never the riverbed. And he concluded from this that the self is a bundle, not a thing, but a fast-moving collection of things that the mind stitches together into the story of a continuous person, the stitching so fast and so seamless that you never see the joins. Neuroscience, 2.5 centuries later, showed up with fMRI machines and electrode arrays and went, yeah, basically. So, where does all of this leave us? The self is a story. The I is a model. The choices arrive half a second after the brain has already made them.
The sense of being a continuous, stable, unified person moving through time is a very sophisticated piece of machinery rather than a direct encounter with some fundamental underlying you. And I think the right response to this is not nihilism. The right response is curiosity, and a particular kind of curiosity that has a very practical application. The self model can be made less automatic, not dismantled. Metzinger's experience of having it dismantled was not fun, and we are not aiming for that, but made conscious, made visible, not permanently, not completely, but in moments, in the flashes of awareness that happen when you surface from the automatic thing running and ask who has been driving. Those moments are not glitches. They are actually the most awake you ever are. They are the moments when the model becomes briefly visible as a model, when you can see the story as a story rather than as reality. And in those moments, in the brief window when you can actually see the machinery, you have something that you don't have the rest of the time. You have the ability to ask whether the story is still the right one, whether the model is running on current data or old data, whether the version of you that is currently generating your intentions and steering your choices and building your life is the version of you that you would actually choose if you were choosing consciously with full information right now. Most people never ask that question, not because they're incapable of it, but because the model is very good at keeping itself invisible, at making its story feel like reality rather than like a story, at making the automatic thing feel like deliberate choice, at making the inherited version of you feel like the actual version of you. But you can learn to notice the moments when it flickers, when the car arrives somewhere and you don't quite know how you got there, when you surface from the automatic and catch a brief glimpse of the machinery. Those moments are not embarrassing glitches. They are invitations, the most important invitations you ever get. The invitation to ask, is this still the story I want to be telling? Is the version of me that's running this show the right version? Or is it running on data from 10 years ago, telling a story about a person that doesn't quite exist anymore, steering a life that was designed for someone I've already outgrown? The self is a story. It is yours. It has always been yours, even when it felt like it wasn't. The process generating it is yours. The model running it is yours. And you have more influence over where it goes than you have probably been giving yourself credit for. Not total control. The brain is not a whiteboard you can erase and start over. The model is conservative and change is slow, and some things are deeply embedded and do not revise easily. But influence, real, meaningful, accumulating influence, the kind that shows up over months and years in the choices you keep making and the stories you keep telling and the things you keep paying attention to. The car is moving. The road is ahead. The question is not whether you were the driver. You probably are not the driver, not entirely, not in the way you thought you were. The question is whether you are awake enough to notice where the car is going, and whether when it surfaces for a moment and the road comes back into focus and you are briefly genuinely present, whether you are going to use that moment to actually look at where you are headed, or just go back to whatever you were thinking about and let it keep driving.